that which gave you and the entire community such chizuk and chiyus. How appropriate is it that that should be your last presentation? That should be the last time that we heard your beautiful voice. And the Antel liebe Eidekesef. Yes, Mechil, I just came in. I didn't hear the Rashiva. I heard a little bit of Schecter. And Yosef, the Zayda held you like a child. Held you like a child. Yeah, you were those that called, one of those who called him Rabbi. We all remember the video where you spoke on the year of the Zayda's P'tira, where you related how the yeshiva was batzitzach to you when you were a young boy in the yeshiva. And he asked Yosef, was machst du? He said, Rabbi, it's hard. He said, I find it difficult to be able to be doing what the yeshiva wants of me. She said, the Rabbi gave you a glance. He said, yes, you'll try. Just try. Rabbi Yosef, you're a mechayev in so many different ways. You're a mechayev in what you made of yourself, how you mevatel yourself to a Rebbe, to Rabbi, to all the Rosh Yeshiva, to Rav Ruderman, to Rav Weinberg, to Rav Kalevsky, to the Yeshiva Shlita. How you made yourself a metzias of Harbatzas HaTorah and Hisaskus BaTorah. As was mentioned, the Siyam HaTorah, the getting everybody to learn Torah, the creating the Achdus in Torah, the learning and the teaching yourself. Sinish came davar cotton, although Rabbi Yosef made it seem so. To come to a Beis Medrash, younger Bachrim, go to a shir with younger Bachrim, listen to a shvuz with younger Bachrim, and no one thought anything of it. Because you, Rabbi Yosef, made it the most natural thing in the world. Because Torah to you was Iber Als. Kavod didn't play a role. Shiva Tzad used to tell over, Rabbi Yosef, when you were a Rav in Virginia, there was a Yid in the community that had to give chalitza. Nishkan from a Europe Yid. And you weren't lazy. You couldn't convince the man. You brought him to Rabbi. You drove up to Baltimore with him. And the Shiva Zizal spoke with him and explained to him the Inyan. The Yid said, Rabbi, with all due respect, I'm not interested. You spent so much time with me. I want to pay you for your time. So Shiva, of course, said, no, I'm not interested. I didn't spend the time with you for money. I wanted to speak with you to explain to you how wichtig this is. So the Yid said, Ebarzeh, let me think about it. And he gave the chalitza. But this is not a godless only about the Zayda. This is a godless about your Rabbi Yosef. You could have said, Meile, and ich kein from a Yid, halt nicht dabei. I'm going to go machsach Meshuggah, I'm going to schlep him to Baltimore, to the Shiva. How's he going to react bechlal? Why should I even try? He was so weit that even after the Shiva spoke to him, he said, halt nicht dabei, I'm not about to do it. And Rabbi Yosef, you didn't take no for an answer. You didn't allow yourself to do what's most convenient for you. Because you meant to have an emes. You meant to have an emes. That's who you were, Yosef. You meant to have an emes. That's why nothing was too difficult for you. You were straight. If something had to be done, you did it. With no fanfare, with no pomp. The antithesis of anything like that. Rabbi Yosef, you were a Rebbe in Pashtus. You were a Rebbe for us in Anivis. You had every right to have a stolz, with a haltung. Many, many people who have a lot less to hold themselves much more than you held of yourself. You were a Rebbe in showing us al tachzik tebel chatzimcha ki lakach netzarta. It's our Shabbos. Just want to close. Pasuk in Tehillim, the pasuk that we say for the name of Yosef, is Hashem Yigmar Bardi. Hashem Chazdecha La'olam. Maisi Yodecha Al Teref. That's the pasuk for the name of Yosef. And I think it personifies Rabbi Yosef very well. Hashem Yigmar Bardi. The Rebbeinu Shalom, just like you showed me chesed until now, you'll show me chesed by my Gemara as well. Your chesed Rebbeinu Shalom with me is going to be forever. Ma'aseh Yodecha al teref. I who am Ma'aseh Yodecha, you'll never let go of. Rabbi Yosef, the Rebbeinu Shalom showed you chesed for many, many years. Life wasn't an easy one. Many difficulties that you endured. But you always felt that the Rebbeinu Shalom would help you. The Rebbeinu Shalom did give out the chasadim with me until now. And the Rebbeinu Shalom Yigmar Ba'di, the Rebbeinu Shalom bring my Gemara, which he did. And Hashem Chazdecha La'olam, it was b'chesed. Anu was after la'anachos. You left us now, missing you. You left us now being misabel over your loss. But with you, the Rebbeinu Shalom did chesed. Ma'aseh Yodecha al teref. The Rebbeinu Shalom didn't let go of you, Rabbi Yosef, for a second. Should be a Benedicture for the Almanas, all sein gesund. The Rebbeinu Shalom should pay her for all the chasadim that she has done, for the children who've taken care of you so unbelievably, who loved you, who reciprocated your love to them, for the yeshiva that was your family, your extended family, your chaverim, your talmidim, for ganz Baltimore, and for ganz Klal Yisrael. Yehi Zecher Baruch.
It's Erev Shabbos, and I indeed do not want to be redundant. But in thinking about what to say, thinking about what it was that produced that quality that I think Schecter said the right word, how loved he was. I, along with hundreds of people here, loved Rabbi Yosef. loved Rav Yosef ben Eliezer Zev. And he was a one of a kind. He was so unique in so many ways. What was it? What was the single specific quality that included everything else, that made, for myself and for so many others, feel this tremendous love for him? Supposed to be maspid, you speak of a mess in his terms, the way he would speak. And as Rosh Shiva mentioned, Rav Yosef was an orator par excellence. And so I want to say the point using, so to speak, homiletic license. On Moshe Rabbeinu, it says at the end of the Torah, at the end of his life, that Leichasa einai v'leinas leichai. He died 120 years old, and he died a young man. His eye was still sharp, and he was still moist and fresh, like a young person. And on Rav Yosef, we can say that Leichasa einai v'leinas leichai. Sure, physically, he was very compromised. He was very compromised. He aged. He aged dramatically, and he carried that age. He carried that age to some degree heavily. But in anything other than his physical capacities, he was mamish, a young man, young and vibrant, like a child with his exuberance and his enthusiasm. We're used to seeing people get older and get a little bit more jaded, get a little more used to things, not be excited about the things that their grandchildren are excited about. But Rav Yosef was young and idealistic. And there's nothing as inspiring to meet in a person as someone that literally, to his last day, in his old age, acts, feels, is inspired like a young man. How he would sit and learn. As was mentioned, he went to shiurim sitting shoulder to shoulder with high school boys, with Beis Medrash Bachrim, with Balabatim a third of his age, until he stood up and walked with difficulty out of the room. He was one of the boys. He acted like one of the boys. And he sat with interest and with excitement, like one of the boys. A Baishan doesn't learn, and young people tend to be less concerned with their dignity. Rav Yosef knew no shame, no hesitance. It was mentioned already how he had such relationships with the Rosh Shiva Zatzal, with Rabbi Neuberger. It was mentioned the outstanding nature of his father. I grew up in Montreal, where the name of his father, Mr. William Schecter, Rav Eliezer Zev, was legendary as the first Reish v'Rishay l'chol davar shebiktusha, a taimech Torah, a maikir rabbanan. But it wasn't just that he spoke of these relationships. He spoke with the inspiration, ketalmid lifnei Rabbi. He would be inspired by them with such humility, like a young person. Vayesar Yosef merkavtai. Yosef Hatzadik. Yosef Hatzadik in last week's Parsha, he's already a melech. His whole family is dependent upon him. He's reached a stature and a station in life, but when his father is coming, he goes himself and he hitches up the wagon himself. He's running to see him. And the Demus de Yuknai Shalaba, the legendary Demus de Yuknai Shalaba, the image of his father, of his role models, that inspired him and moved him all the way through, fresh, like a child. At the end of this week's Parsha, Vayef Yosef b'dabram elav. Yosef wept when they spoke to him. Rav Yosef wept easily. He wept easily, but not the tears of sadness, of resignation. He was alive and emotional, as was mentioned. It was easy for him to cry. It was easy for him to rejoice. How many people do you know, young or old, that at the end of a regular weekday minyan would burst out in a niggin and try to get other people to join in? Vayef Yosef. When Yosef cried, Vayevk Yosef b'dabra milav, he was crying over the fact that his brothers came to him and felt a tension and felt an animosity. They came to ask Mechila again. They came to plead that Yosef wouldn't treat them with resentment. And that's what made Yosef HaTzadik, the Ma'ached, ultimately, of the Shiftei Ka. That's what made Yosef cry. And indeed, this Rav Yosef, the Siyum HaTorah, he wanted to get people to learn. He wanted to be a Ma'aseh, like he was here in the yeshiva, like he was in everything. But his deepest pride and his biggest goal in the Siyum HaTorah was not simply the Limud HaTorah, but was the fact that Klal Yisrael would come together, that he had Jews of all stripes, of all kinds of yarmulkes and hats and who knows what, and they would all be together, unified by the Torah. Because he wanted Yidden to be together. And his Avos Yisrael was idealistic, was enthusiastic, was passionate. Vayevk Yosef b'dabra milav. He was excited to be in a special environment. He loved to be in this Beis Medrash. He got a charge from being in the Aguda, from being in our shul. He would come, he would daven, he just soaked up the atmosphere. Today's Daf Hayomi, a schedule which he kept very, very faithfully. Today's Daf Hayomi speaks about, it's the end of Ksubis, speaks about Eretz Yisrael and the Kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. And the Gemara says, Kishem shasur latzeis me'eretz Yisrael lebavel, kachasur latzeis mibavel lechutz la'aretz. And the Gemara speaks about a Kedushas HaMakom of Bavel, because it was a Makom Torah. And it was different. And even if it didn't have the depth of the history of the Avos that Eretz Yisrael had, but it had Me'ain, Kedushas HaAretz. And he was so sensitive to this, so enlivened by it. And Rav Yosef was the ultimate optimist. The optimism of a young person who always saw a wonderful future ahead of him. Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker. One of his favorite nigunim from Meir Shapira. Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker. I remember once we were going through, as a community, a difficult time, and I spoke in shul a couple of times, very serious words, very serious drushes. And he came over to me and he said, Rav Moshe Yashikoyach, good, it needed to be said. He says, but now you have to lift our spirits. Now you have to make us optimistic and alive again. And yesterday, he's telling his family, on the mend, we're getting better. And you might say, sometimes there's such a thing as foolish optimism. So look again at the Heintige Daf, at the Daf Hayomi of the Yom P'tira of Rav Yosef, where the bulk of the discussion is about Tchias HaMesim. You know that when we go to a cemetery, we call it not, come on, let's reconcile ourselves. Here we're facing death, the final end. Let's realize it. Let's come to grips with it. We call it a Beis HaChayim, the house of the living. We say a bracha when we come to a Beis HaChayim of Mechayeh HaMesim, Mechayeh Mesim Ata. It's never a time for the pessimism. It's never over. Indeed, Rav Yosef, you were on the mend. You were on the mend. Rav Yosef loved his family in a magnificent way. Regarding him, it could certainly be said, he loved mamish beautifully and blindly. He would refer, and I'm sure many, many of you remember, when he would speak publicly, and he would always acknowledge his family. He wouldn't say their names. He would say, my Moshe, my Meir, my Rachel, my Chaim. my Rabbi. He would speak in the possessive with such a warmth and with such a connection and with such a magnificent pride. And Baruch Hashem, he was Zeicha to a family that took care of him, that was around him literally during his health, during his illness, and at the moments of Yitzias Neshama. I know, Baruch Hashem, all of his family. And they all took care beautifully and magnificently of all of his physical needs. I have the privilege to know best his youngest, Chaim, and Chaim's mishpacha, who, of course, being the ones living here, took care and were mechabed him and took care of him so beautifully and so consistently all of the time. But more than anything else, more than physically taking care of him, I think that he got such a special nachas from Chaim, and I hope his older siblings will forgive me. But he got a special nachas from Chaim because he carried forth kara da'avua, all of these qualities. The same youthful excitement and exuberance, the same excitement about a Rebbe and a yeshiva and bringing his talmidim to learn in the yeshiva of their father and of their grandfather, and his sons and his daughters. The same exuberance and excitement about Torah, about mitzvahs, about gemilus chasadim. He saw Baruch Hashem in his children, and he saw very, very clearly in Chaim. We hope that Rabbi Yosef and Eliezer Zev will indeed be a Melit Yasher for his almana, who took care of him beautifully, who the family appreciated so deeply and so much. And he should be a Melit Yasher for her, for all of his children, for all of his grandchildren. Bila amavas lanetzach l'mocha Hashem l'kim dima me'al kol pavim.
Rabbi Schecter, go. Shus Arashiva, Shus Ramim, Shus Menale, Yeshiva. I have to say, B'shus my older twin, who felt that I should be the sibling to the Masbi because I was involved in this yeshiva here for a nice number of years, and this is where I should be. Einamim Vorshel, Lifenim Flames El Vorshel, as alluded to in many of the speaking here this morning. In general, I have nothing much to add. They spoke so eloquently and correctly about my brother Yosef. Just want to maybe highlight a number of points. Firstly, Koras HaToiv to the yeshiva, where he lived, and he grew in so many theoretical ways. He certainly wants me to give Koras HaToiv to the yeshiva, to all the yeshiva, brought it to his Rabbi, for Rabbi Verneman Zatzal, and invite her to the Menahalim, or the Yikar Menahal, Rabbi Nurer Zatzal. as was alluded to here in a number of ways. Chazal say that by tzedakah yavazeh yosim mechaimish, and the Meforshim say that that's not referring to Torah. Torah is different. King give him was mevil. How much you want? There's no limit. And I want to say that extends to also what the Meforshim say, that Shutfis, Yisachar, and Vulin. Somebody wants to be a 50%, he could be a 50%. Das ist Shutfis, and andere Sachen Ganzen. I would like to say that my brother, Rabbi Yosef, brought a new image to light in Torah world of Israel and Baltimore, expanded to other cities. Yisachar and Zvulun are two. My brother Yosef manifested these two things within one person. The Yisachar and the Zvulun, and way over the Yavazeh Yosim Mechaimish. It was a good 50-50, as alluded to. Many Aspedim, the Chashivas of Limud HaTorah. It wasn't only in Dibur, it was in Maises, you all know. And it was alluded to many times. The Shiurim he attended. And, speaking to him on the phone, man, a good word, man. And he embodied this Yisachar in one person. And this is a new image that we should all take from this person, to the degree that it was 50-50, no limit. It's her Shabbos, so I'll say that the din is that to a chai you say lech lishalayim, to not a chai not a sorry, not a chai you say lech lishalayim. I did, but to my brother Yosef, I'd say and it's not b'sholem, it's lisholem. It's growing and growing and growing. I forgot to mention that in the course of Taif, like your brother would want me to mention, not to exclude so many mishtatfim in his last days, and Tira. I just want to mention two of them, Rabbi Hauer, again not to exclude so many others, Rabbi Hauer and Mr. Nelkin.
Representing the inner question for Schecter.
This week's Parsha, Torah tells us that Yaakov is about to die. And he calls him Yosef, and he says, Ephraim and Menashe, Keruvim v'Shimon Yirli. Yaakov considered Ephraim and Menashe as his children. This is how Zadie looked at us. Even though we were only his grandchildren, he loved us like children. He always took an interest in how each of us was learning. He would ask each of our Rabbi how we were progressing. This is a great source of nachas too. He always wanted to learn with all of us, even if it was only for a few minutes. Over the last few years since I left yeshiva to learn Eretz Yisrael, whenever I would come home, I'd be greeted with a Shalom Aleichem, immediately followed with when are we going to learn? Even during his final illness, when he was too weak to concentrate, his desire to learn never wavered. Just as recent as this past Tuesday night, he learned a few psukim with my youngest sister. For 2 years of the Mechina, my grandfather was my night seder chavrus. Whenever we called him to wish him even a good Shabbos, even to speak to him, you were lucky if you even got a minute. All he was interested in knowing was how you're learning. What's in the yeshiva? With every conversation you had with him, he always had a story to share from one of his rabbeim. He would say, Rabbi used to tell us like this, or Rabbi used to tell